Hello, everybody. Hello, Trailblazers. I'm glad you've come. On behalf of the TRIA Germany user group, welcome to another episode in our Salesforce ISV Landscape Series, in which we explore solutions from third parties in the Salesforce ecosystem. My name is René. I'm the user group leader, and I'll be your host for today. Our esteemed guest and speaker is Scott Covert from Salesforce ISV Tython, who will kindly show us around Permissions Assistant. The session will have three parts: intro, demo, and Q&A. In principle, you can ask questions at any time. For that, please raise your hand, or if possible, please save them for the Q&A at the end and note them on the Q&A channel. So let's get started. Scott, over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you, René. I'll start out by sharing my screen here. So first off, I wanted to say thank you to René and the entire Ohana Trier admin group for the chance to speak with you all today. I'm excited to chat with you all, as well as everyone who's joining virtually over the call, about Tython's application Permissions Assistant and how it can be used to simplify security and permissions management for Salesforce admins. So just as a quick agenda of what we'll be going through, first I'm going to start off with an introduction about Tython as well as myself. Next, we'll move into some background on the Permissions Assistant application so that folks can learn about what it does, who it's for, and what the main problems it's solving. And then we'll move on into kind of a demo section where we'll be going through different real-life scenarios we see admins facing and how Permissions Assistant can help them with those issues. And then we'll talk about next steps. I'll share a little bit of our roadmap, as well as how folks joining on the call can install Permissions Assistant to their application. And as René already mentioned, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. If at any time you do have a question, though, I know René is actively checking the chat. So feel free to drop it in there, and I'll try and stop periodically to see if there are any questions that I can answer. Okay, so who is Tython? Well, basically, to sum up in one sentence, we build apps on the Salesforce platform. We have been around a long time. We were founded in 2012, and we are a registered Salesforce ISV partner. And we're a team of certified architects, developers, consultants, and admins. We are a registered ISV partner, but because we've been around so long, we have worn many different hats, serving as an SI and helping Salesforce customers implement Salesforce to meet their business needs. We've, of course, acted as an ISV as we've built this Permissions Assistant application we're discussing today. We've also served as a PDO, and for folks on the call that aren't familiar, PDOs help other Salesforce ISVs build and list applications to distribute via the Salesforce AppExchange. And of course, all this experience that we've had has exposed us to many different orgs, as well as many different Salesforce admins. So we've gotten a real good feel for all the different problems that the current Salesforce admin faces today. A little bit about myself. My name is Scott Covert. I am a certified Salesforce system architect, and I'm the founder of Tython. I've been in the space a long time. Started working with Salesforce in 2010. So kind of put things in perspective, most automations in those days were done with workflow rules. Apex was very new, and we didn't have all the great tools we have today, like Salesforce Flow. So if you needed to do any automation beyond workflow rules, it was Apex triggers. What I'm most passionate about is helping Salesforce admins by building apps, automations, and solutions to apply best practices and just make their lives easier. Okay, so let's move on to some background, talk a little bit about the challenges that we're seeing many Salesforce admins face today. These are some of the hot topics we've seen from orgs that we've worked in, the admins we've worked directly with, as well as all the dozens of Salesforce admins we've interviewed as we were building Permissions Assistant. One of the main themes that kept recurring was org complexity. Obviously, Salesforce has been around a long time now, being founded in 1999. And so for customers that have been on the platform for a long time, they're dealing with very, very large orgs at this point, a lot of different metadata to manage. Many different business processes are being embedded into Salesforce, right? So in the early days, Salesforce was purely a CRM tool. And as we all know, today it's grown into a much larger platform that companies are running their entire business on. So that adds a lot of complexity, and it's been difficult for admins to stay ahead of all that complexity. And in line with that, one challenge they face is compounding technical debt. So as more and more functionality and features are rolled out by Salesforce, and more business processes are built and embedded into the platform by admins and developers, more and more metadata is being created. And sometimes this can be a compounding issue because rather than addressing and dealing with technical debt head on, it can often be easier just to create additional technical debt rather than do any sort of spring cleaning. So this can be a kind of a negative feedback loop that Salesforce admins face. Then, of course, there is inadequate documentation. I think most folks on the call would probably agree there is a love-hate relationship with documentation. I don't know many individuals that love writing and creating Salesforce documentation, and yet when it comes time to troubleshoot an issue, it can be invaluable. Or perhaps there are some consultants on the call that have dealt with trying to get a lay of the land of a brand new org, and it can be very difficult if there are no breadcrumbs left behind by the folks that built out the platform. Of course, time-consuming troubleshooting is another issue that many admins face today. So these are very important problems. Permissions issues arise, and users need things to be fixed so that they can do their jobs. And so admins are required to put these fires out very quickly. And while important, this kind of work isn't exactly innovative and doesn't really push forward the organization in building new functionality so that they can continue to grow their business on Salesforce. And of course, another challenge that admins face are the ever-evolving best practices, right? So I'm sure many folks on the call can remember a time when Process Builder was pushed as a best practice for creating automations on the platform. And we all know how that went. And of course, now today, thankfully, we have Salesforce Flows, a much better tool. But the point is, best practices do evolve over time. And as the Salesforce ecosystem continues to grow, it can be harder and harder for admins to keep up with those evolving best practices. So all these challenges is what led us to be inspired to build Permissions Assistant. Essentially, we wanted to build a tool that could provide help for admins. Specifically, that would provide a clear org overview so that they can quickly grasp a lay of the land of their entire organization in a single pane of glass dashboard. We wanted to offer easy metadata discovery because oftentimes admins are forced to go through many different clicks and many different page loads in Salesforce Setup to get the information that they're trying to find. We also wanted to build a tool that would provide simple summaries of all the different metadata in their organization, such as permission sets and profiles. And one big issue we wanted to address was the time-consuming troubleshooting I talked about before. We wanted to build a tool that could support admins by really adding in some time-saving features when they're dealing with things like permissions issues between two users. And then finally, with those evolving best practices, it can be very difficult to keep up to date. Also, many folks on the call might be what we call accidental admins, right? And are newer to the platform and are still trying to grasp what the current best practices are. So we wanted to build a tool that had embedded, straightforward recommendations for admins to leverage. Okay, so who is Permissions Assistant for? Well, specifically, we find the tool is most valuable to growing SMBs. So those small, medium-sized businesses around 50 users and up that are now starting to face some real security and permissions management problems on the platform. A lot of organizations, I think, in the very, very early days of both the company and their adoption of Salesforce, make the mistake of granting very elevated permissions to far too many users, sometimes even making just everybody a system administrator. This, in our view, is really trading security and privacy for convenience, and it catches up to you eventually. So once you get to around 50 users and up, folks start facing issues, and they realize they do need to have a strategy for Salesforce security, and they do need to get a grasp on permissions and apply that the least privilege security model. Of course, regulated industries and compliance-focused orgs, such as financial sector, healthcare sector, startups that perhaps are going through SOC 2 compliance. All organizations in this space are going to be thinking top of mind about the Salesforce security model that they have and ensuring that that least privilege security model is in place. We really are targeting cost-conscious but value-driven teams, right? So Permissions Assistant provides a lot of great functionality, a lot of powerful functionality, and we tried to narrow its scope to not provide any additional functionality or features that perhaps SMBs wouldn't need. So in order to get some of the amazing features we're going to be talking about on the call, you'd need to purchase many Salesforce add-ons that could lead to balloon your contract costs up to even 40% from what it already is from the licenses. So we wanted to provide a lot of value at a much more cost-effective price point. And now on the right-hand side, we're going to look at some of the different personas that we are helping and how they could be leveraging Permissions Assistant. So we have Alex Admin, very creative names here. Alex is a Salesforce admin, and some of the main issues that he faces that Permissions Assistant can help with would be streamlining onboarding and offboarding of users. And a big one is troubleshooting those access issues, right? Which we're going to talk about a little bit later when we get into our scenarios. But Permissions Assistant can help Alex save loads of time when users come to him with permissions problems. Now, Chloe Consultant, she's a Salesforce consultant with a slightly different problem than Alex. Her main issue is she's juggling a lot of different balls. Each week, she has to jump into several different clients' orgs, and she needs to be able to do some quick org discovery. And as the expert, she's expected to very quickly be able to grasp that lay of the land and understand the Salesforce org she's working in. She'd also like the ability to run some risk assessments and audits of the current org so that she can show what fires really need to be put out to her clients and help prioritize what they're working on. And then lastly, we have Alan Architect, a Salesforce architect, who is thinking more big picture and would like to use Permissions Assistant to plan an entire org permissions restructure so that we can move toward that least privilege security model. Okay, so what makes us different, unique fingerprint, so to speak? Well, first off, we are a native security reviewed solution. There are other solutions out there that exist either as Chrome extensions or perhaps run fully off platform that extract Salesforce metadata. But we wanted to build something that Salesforce admins could leverage without ever having to leave Salesforce and trust that their metadata stays under their control. Additionally, Salesforce thankfully has realized that permissions and security management is an issue many admins face, and so the last few releases they have been coming out with some great functionality, such as the newer summary views on users and permission sets. But we find that many admins still face that task of having to click through many different pages and ultimately wind up in the scenario of having several different tabs open side by side. And we wanted to provide kind of that single pane of glass dashboard so that admins could really get in one page load an overview of their entire org. And then also, we have a very active development roadmap. Later on in the call, we'll talk about how folks can install to their own sandboxes, and we'd love to get any feedback you folks might have on what we should be working on and how we can continue to improve the product. But we're really excited for where things are going. Okay, so I would like to jump into some scenarios, some real-world use cases that we think many admins could benefit from using permissions assistant for. But before I do, I wanted to just pause here and check with you, René, to see if there are any questions that have popped up in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott, for this insightful overview of permissions assistant and its background. So far, I don't think there are questions, but we might as well ask if somebody has a question about what we've seen so far. It doesn't seem so. So yeah, kindly please proceed.
Okay, great. This will be nice because we're going to get to see in action how the application can be really valuable, and perhaps this will evoke some more questions folks might have. So let's look at our first scenario. I think this is probably a situation many admins on the call have faced. Two users have come that are supposed to be in the same role have come to you and claim that they're seeing different info on records. So we need to figure out what permissions differ between them and why one user is not seeing what the other is. Previously, this would require a lot of clicks in Salesforce setup, right? You need to go to the advanced user details. You need to see all the profile of both users to make sure they're the same. Then you need to go through all the different permission sets assigned to them, see what makes them different, etc. With Permissions Assistant, I hop in here. And here I'm loaded into an org that has Permissions Assistant pre-installed. I'm on our overview page, which we will come back to later, but I'm going to go over for this scenario in particular to our user analysis tab. Now, on our user analysis tab, we'll be able to pull up a specific user in our org or any other org that we are connected to. Yes, Permissions Assistant does connect to multiple orgs if you'd like. We'll discuss more on that later. I'm able to pull up an individual user. And I'll be able to quickly see all the permissions that this user has assigned to him based on the cumulative sum of permissions granted through all of his perm sets as well as his profile. But our scenario in particular, and I could go through here, and it's nice because I have this very snappy UI to see all the different permissions that Leuck has. But for this scenario in particular, right, we're focused on comparing two users head to head. So we can go into our comparison mode here, and I can select our other user. Let's pull up Han. And now I'm going to see this side-by-side differential analysis of Leuck to Han and see what makes each user unique from the other. So, being a trained Jedi Knight, it looks like Leuck has a lot of different permissions that Han does not. And there's not that much actually that Han has been granted access to that Leuck doesn't already have access to. So that seems to make sense. For our scenario in particular, we can now go through and see what actual permissions are granted to Leuck that Han doesn't have that's impacting the different info being shown in their records. So that's our head-to-head user analysis. Okay, our next scenario, this is going to be another familiar task for some folks, I think. Permission Assistant can be a great tool for providing org-based comparisons, such as comparing your sandbox org to your production org. So here's the situation, right? Our sandbox was refreshed a few months ago, and now we've lost track of changes. And we also suspect that some folks have secretly been updating a few things in production directly, as we all know you really shouldn't do, but does happen from time to time. So we need to validate now the differences between our sandbox org and our production org. And this is great because Salesforce has recently come out with the bar, the header bar for sandboxes that tries to show kind of an audit trail of all the metadata that's changed in a sandbox, which does help this scenario somewhat. But again, oftentimes, unfortunately, changes are being made directly in production. So it's not necessarily just the changes in your sandbox that are causing sandbox and prod to be different. And if something was changed directly in prod, we want to be sure we're not overwriting it when we do an upcoming deployment, right? So in Permissions Assistant, I can move over to our Change Explorer tab. And here's where we're going to get into that cross-org analysis I talked about. So on the left here, I'm already pre-selected the org that the tool is running in. And on the right, I'm going to choose another org that I've connected to act as our production org. Then I can select, but for each org, any perm set or profile that I'd like to compare. So let's just compare maybe the system admin profile for our sandbox and the system admin profile for production. Now we're going to see a lot of differences here. That's because, of course, the org I'm in is not actually a sandbox of the org on the right. So hopefully, if you were running through this analysis, you would not see quite so many differences. But you can see on the right, everything that makes this org's sysadmin profile unique from this org's sysadmin profile, and vice versa on the left-hand side. Okay, let's move on to our next scenario. So time-based comparisons is another valuable area where Permissions Assistant can be very valuable, because oftentimes, you're working in production, receiving deployments from multiple teams, and unfortunately, it does happen where people will step on toes, right? So in this scenario, we have had several recent deployments, and we've started getting complaints from users about some permissions errors. So we suspect that one of the deployments maybe has reverted some recent changes, and we need to compare our permission set to its prior state. So once again, I can leverage I'm just going to refresh here to give a clean slate here, but we can leverage the Change Explorer tab. Now this time, although we can, as we just saw, go cross-org, now we're really just interested in performing a comparison across time of how a given permission set has changed or profile has changed. So rather than selecting our production org, I'm going to leave the default here of the org that I'm running in. And on the left, I'm going to choose my profile. And Permissions Assistant works by snapshotting over time all of your permission sets and profiles in your org. That's how we're able to provide all this functionality we're going through today. And so if you do suspect that some toes were stepped on, and you need to go through and see how a given permission set or profile looked a week, 2 weeks ago, that's possible through these snapshots. So on the left, I'm gonna select actually the most recent snapshot. Or excuse me, I'm gonna select the oldest snapshot here, taken yesterday, and then on the right, I'm gonna pull up sysadmin profile, and we'll have pre-selected the most recent snapshot that was taken today. And now this is a similar view. We're going to be able to see the side-by-side differences of what makes one profile unique from the other, or I should say one snapshot unique from the other. You can see that in the most recent snapshot, we did add access to this aptly named new field on the account object. And so we can not only just track changes across org, but across time as well. Okay, scenario 4, an org-wide search. So this is a really cool feature that I'm excited to share. Let's imagine that we'd like to remove a custom object that is no longer needed from our org. But our org has grown so large and we have so many different permission sets and profiles, we actually are unsure of everything that touches this object. And we'd like to quickly run a search for anything that provides CRUD access to it. So before, this could require a lot of different navigating through many different Salesforce setup screens, but Permissions Assistant in our allows you to search all permissions and profiles for any selected permission that you're interested in finding. So on the left, we're seeing essentially all the possible permissions in your org, all the different object and field level security settings that you could care about, as well as all the system permissions, all the Apex permissions, etc. So let's just do a search now to see everything that has read and edit access on this account type field, for instance. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to see all the different perm sets and profiles that grant access to that field. And I'm going to see all the users that have access to that field because they have been assigned one or more of the profiles or perm sets listed below. So I really can't stress enough how much faster now this search is than having to go through the setup screens to get the very same information. And this is a very powerful search feature too. So by default, we can select, it will run a search for the profiles and perm sets that contain any of what you selected. But if you were looking for a very narrow match, you can select many different fields, objects, and permissions, and then say, I want to search only perm sets and profiles that contain all of those permissions together in one. And then, of course, that's going to whittle down the results a lot more. Okay, scenario number 5, a multi-org audit. So hopefully many of you are preparing or are thinking at least about preparing to migrate to a permission set-led security model. Another scenario we often see is that due to an acquisition or a merger, companies are actually managing multiple Salesforce orgs. And so when we're performing this audit, we actually would like to look at 2 separate orgs. Specifically, very, very high level, we really just want to understand how many profiles we have in all of our different orgs. So now we're going to go back to our single pane of glass dashboard, the overview tab. Here you're going to be able to select specifically what org you're interested in reviewing, and you're going to get information in these tiles at a high level view of the metadata in the org and perhaps maybe some items that require your attention. And you can dive in deeper if you'd like. So for instance, in this scenario, right, we were interested in knowing just how many profiles we have in our different orgs. It looks like we have 38 in the org I'm logged into currently, with one of those being custom. And in the other org under our management, we have 22 profiles, 5 of those being custom. If I want to dive a little bit deeper in my audit, I can just expand the tile, go in and look at all the different profiles specifically. And I'm going to see this really quick overview of all the different Salesforce permissions embedded directly into this profile at the object, field level, security level, record types, system permissions, everything. We even show user assignments, just so that you know exactly what users have a profile perm set assigned to them from this view. Okay, scenario 6, and this is going to also be a scenario where we're leveraging that great overview tab. We just want to understand, perhaps you're an organization, right, that is now growing beyond those early stages when a lot of high-risk permissions were given to far too many individuals. Now we just need to see what users have high-risk permissions and perhaps what profiles and permission sets are assigning those permissions in order to begin enforcing that principle of least privilege. So this, you maybe have already noticed it since we have it highlighted front and center here. I'm going to switch back to the org I'm running in though, but you may have already noticed that we do have a few tiles that down below that specifically call out risky permissions. So here I'm going to be able to see all the users that have risky permissions and pull them up and see all the different profiles and perm sets that are assigned to those users, and what dangerous, risky permissions they have access to. And if you're interested in seeing specifically what perm sets and profiles are assigning risky permissions, you can. We have another tile to view that as well. Looks like we have a lot of high-risk permission sets and profiles, unfortunately, in this org that we're going to want to go through. Now, these high-risk permissions are identified by our team based on our experience, but of course, we know some folks might be a little bit more risk averse and want to add a few other permissions that they deem high risk. That can be done very quickly through our setup screen. So over in our setup tab, we can actually go to this page to view all the dangerous permissions that are set up in the org, and we can tweak what we deem to be dangerous and what we deem to be safe. So fully configurable for any admins that want to tweak that. Okay, scenario 7. Let's say that we finally were able to take that that vacation that we so sorely needed, and while we were out, we assigned a delegated admin. And one of the tasks they were supposed to be doing while we were gone was creating a few new users. And we just like to basically quickly see what users were recently updated in the system to confirm that indeed they did assign that task or complete that task while we were out. Well, again, back on our single pane of glass dashboard here, I can see very quickly any entities, permission sets, and profiles, as well as users that were recently updated. And if I want to go into a little bit deeper information to get info on specifically who or what was updated, I can just expand that tile here. So we can see, it looks like indeed, while we were out, thankfully, the admin did update all these users and did create them as they were supposed to. And I just want to highlight here again, we can do the same thing, not just for at the user level, but at the permission set and profile level. Now, I think it's very useful to be looking at all this information with this overall dashboard view, so all the tiles at once. But you've obviously seen that you're able to quickly expand into an individual tile. We do have this feature to expand them all if you'd like to really go deep on every single summary that we provide. But if there's anything that maybe doesn't really resonate with you specifically, you can also turn off any of these tiles that you don't want to see anymore on this page. Okay, scenario number 8, purging unassigned permission sets. So folks on the call might remember that permission sets actually came out a few releases before permission set groups, and it led to a proliferation of perm sets. And some organizations now have so many that they're getting in this negative feedback loop, this technical debt issue, this compounding technical debt issue that we spoke about earlier, where when new objects or fields are created that probably belong on an individual perm set that already exists, it's gotten too difficult to figure out where, it's been too difficult to figure out where that object and field level security settings belong, and it's easier to just create another new perm set. And so now we have more and more perm sets being created. Sometimes they aren't even used though, right? Especially as functionality changes over time. So we need to clean that up. And one of the easiest first steps to doing that is finding unassigned permission sets, because those are possible candidates, right? That can be purged right away. Permission system makes it very easy to quickly see any entities that are completely unassigned. You probably saw the big red scary tile right here, unassigned entities, in our overview tab. Here I'm going to be able to see that I have several different perm sets and profiles and even perm set groups in this org that are not assigned to any users and could potentially be removed from the system. And we talked earlier about providing straightforward recommendations for those accidental admins or those folks that are newer to the platform. You may have noticed some of our tiles do provide embedded best practice recommendations so that admins can get further insights into how they can clean up or put out these fires and clean up these issues to promote a permission set led security model. Okay, scenario 9. So we can think about the scenario where we're now embracing the great new dynamic forms and lightning record pages over building out many different classic page layouts that are all assigned from various record types. And now we need to go through our org and just see what page layouts can be removed and purged from their system. And one way to quickly identify that is just easily seeing what page layouts are extremely similar to other ones. So back in our permissions assistant tool, we have a layout analysis. This provides insight into our classic page layouts in whatever org we're connected to. You can pull up the specific object that you're interested in. Here, I'm just going to pull up their standard account object. And I'm going to see all the page layouts that exist for that object. And if I click on one, I'm going to see user assignments, as well as information on all the fields that are embedded into that page layout. And perhaps most importantly for the scenario at hand, I'm going to see a similarity score of this page layout compared to all the different page layouts for the same object. So we go through and do a head-to-head analysis based on permissions, based on fields embedded on the layouts, as well as whether it's read-only or required, and provide an overall score of how similar the page layouts are to one another. And kind of similar to the head-to-head user analysis that we looked at earlier, you can do a diff analysis between two page layouts. And so I can see here, looks like the only difference between the account layout and the account support layout is that the account layout has that new field that we created earlier. And of course, it actually is assigned to different users, whereas this page layout is not assigned to anyone. So given it's essentially identical, say for this new field, and it's not assigned to anyone, this is probably a good candidate to be removed from our system. Okay, here's the 10th and final scenario that I wanted to go over before we go into next steps here. This is an exciting new feature that's in development right now that we're currently building, and I do have it applied to this development org that I'm demoing from today. So I spoke earlier about the vast number of permission sets that many admins are trying to grapple with. Again, we've seen orgs with over 1,000, and even with the newer summary view that Salesforce has provided, and even with our ability to quickly dive into the depths of all the different object permissions and field level security permissions embedded in an org, embedded in a permission set or profile, sometimes it's easiest just to get an easily digestible summary, right? And so we're working on leveraging AI to provide an admin-friendly summary of different perm sets and profiles. This can really help out, right, if the prior admin didn't provide any documentation, and we just wanted to define in plain terms what each permission set does. So I'll go back to, once again, our overview page here, and I'll just expand our permission sets and go down and find maybe this Jedi Knight permission set. And let's just click here and see what exactly this permission set contains. And what this is doing is it's taking a snapshot of the permissions contained within the Jedi Knight permission set, and then it's using AI to generate this summary. So I won't bore you with reading all the details here, but this is a quick way that an admin can get a very fast summary in plain text of what a permission set does. Okay, I know there's going to be some questions, I'm sure. So we'll address those in just a minute. I'm just going to go over roadmap of where we're headed, and next steps of how folks can start playing with Permissions Assistant today. And then I'll ask René if there are any follow-up questions to go through. So yeah, that last scenario we just went through, right, is an AI enhancement that we're actively working on. We're also excited about other enhancements we can be providing by leveraging the power of AI, such as actually helping with suggestions of how profiles can be broken down into permission sets. As we all know, permissions management on profiles will eventually be sunsetted by Salesforce, and so we should be thinking about that. And we think AI could be a great tool to help admins in planning out that migration. Another feature that we're looking into building based on a lot of feedback we've gotten from our users is a permissions analyzer. So this could be a really cool tool if folks out there have ever built a Salesforce flow and then get complaints that its users are hitting errors when they try and run it, and they're unsure exactly what permissions are causing the problem, and they need to then go through all the different nodes and try and figure out what the user is missing. This permissions analyzer would be meant to take a given Salesforce flow and just advise the admin, these are the permissions that are required to run this flow. So make sure any users that are going to be running it have those permissions. Another enhancement we're looking to add would be automated notifications. So I spoke a little bit about how Permissions Assistant is taking those snapshots of your profiles and your permission sets in your org. And we've gotten feedback that a lot of admins would like continuous monitoring so that they can be alerted and notified if there have been any changes to a user's permissions or any of the permissions contained within a permission set or profile. And so sort of like an automated audit trail. Another thing we're looking into adding would be some more analysis around objects, fields, and data in particular. By that, I mean an overview of object and field level usage, as well as an analysis of the data contained in your records so that you can be identifying things like PII and et cetera. And then finally, we talked a little bit about how some of our tiles on our overview page have those recommendations of best practices that admins can follow. We're always looking to add more of those to continue to support admins as they look to adopt a permission set-led security model and that principle of least privilege. Okay, I'd like to say thank you once again to René and the entire Ohana Trier admin group, as well as all the folks that joined today on the call. Please do check us out on the AppExchange. We are at listing.permissionsassistant.com. That will take you straight to our AppExchange listing where you can install to a sandbox. And if there's time, I'm happy to even walk through what the setup would look like if folks on the call would find that valuable. Do please, if you have any follow-up questions that we aren't able to address in a few minutes here, do please reach out to me at scott@permissionsassistant.com. And just as a special thank you to all the folks that joined today, the first 5 folks sending me a note saying Ohana Trier will receive a special offer. So I will ask René first if there are any questions in the chat to go over. And if not, ask if we have time if you'd like to see how the setup of the application works.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott, for this great presentation, for your elaboration on the use cases and on the roadmap. I think this has been very insightful. As for questions, I'm not currently seeing any in the Q&A. If you know me, I always have a number of them. As an exercise, let's ask if there are any questions. For example, Jill or Suman or Marie-Hélène, do you have questions?
At the moment, I don't. Thank you. I might reach out to you at a later point. But thank you. It was really interesting.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. then I would like to hand over the management of questions to Jonas. This seems a bit like a kabuki dance, but we want to do this going forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, René, and thanks again, Scott, for that great presentation. So as of now, there are no questions. So again, if you have any, feel free to post them in the Q&A section. And I would start the Q&A section with a pretty generic question, I would say, looking at AppExchange. There's also a solution provided by Salesforce themselves called Access and Permissions Assistant. So what would you say are the key differences between your solution and the solution offered by Salesforce?
Yes, it has been some time since I played with that solution. I know at one point they were having a lot of issues with their setup. I don't know if they've addressed those or not yet. But I think that that was built earlier before some of the newer functionality that Salesforce is embedding into Salesforce setup directly. I'd still say the main differentiator, and I can go back to our slide here, would be we provide that single pane of glass overview. So I played around with that tool a little bit, and it's a great tool to have in your back pocket as an admin. And yet it still seems to require a lot of different page loads. It doesn't have quite the same functionality that we have. It does not have the head-to-head user comparison, for instance. And we find that is a really valuable use of the tool, the diff analysis. And perhaps most importantly to many different folks on the call here, that tool does not go cross-org. So that's specifically for analyzing permission sets and profiles in whatever org that tool is installed to. So I really want to stress that Permissions Assistant allows you to jump between your sandbox and your production org, or perhaps two production orgs if you're managing multiple, whereas a lot of the different tools out there are solely focused on a single org wherever that application is installed. So that would be some of the differences.
Yeah, thank you so much. So now we have some questions. So I would start by going through them. So René asks, what does PA's existing client base look like?
I'm sorry?
What does PA's existing client base look like?
So what is our kind of ideal customer profile? So let me go back. We are mostly working with those SMBs, like I mentioned, that are growing fast and where security and permissions has become top of mind for them. We're working with folks that are in the nonprofit space specifically as well, and individuals that are preparing for the migration of off profiles to solely permission sets for managing permissions. I'm sure many folks on the call will remember that Salesforce had initially planned to sunset permissions on profiles in spring of 26, I want to say. I think that has been delayed. But in that time, a lot of different organizations started getting ready for that. And so those are the kind of organizations that have been working with us. We've also worked with consultants that need to, kind of like we talked about with this Chloe consultant user, that need to drop into many different orgs and quickly get an overall audit and kind of health score for their org that they're working in. So those are some of the different kind of personas and customer profiles we're working with.
Yeah, thanks. So another question by René. Can you imagine adding a conversational AI interface in the future?
Yes, that is something that we've considered specifically. So I showed earlier the summary view, right? That is an active development, and we would, I think, like to expand upon that, because perhaps that can be a great way to a great way to get an initial explanation of what a permission set of profile does. But we understand that maybe an admin or consultant has a specific question in mind, like yes or no, does this field, is this field granted read access by this permission set, et cetera. So that is something we're considering a conversational interface as well.
Yeah, okay, so another question by René. How much storage space does the snapshots consume?
I can show that here. So I've taken 2 snapshots of in this org that we're in currently, and they both took up about 1 megabyte. And this is importantly, this is file storage, which is much larger storage capacity than, say, data storage for individual records in your system. And then if you were in an organization where you were actually starting to run out of file storage, there's the ability we offer to delete eventually snapshots once you've reached a certain data retention period. But we also are investigating building out integrations with third-party solutions like S3 for folks that never want to lose any of their old snapshots, but would prefer to push them into a trusted source, such as Amazon, which of course, Salesforce now is often running on AWS, so is a trusted partner of the system.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. So René has yet another question.
Great, I love it.
What about actually helping admins to execute complex changes as opposed to only providing insights and recommendations?
Yes, very. I'm loving all these questions. We need to get some follow-up calls, I think, with you. The first approach we want to tackle is providing insights and actionable recommendations. Right? We didn't want to go too far. We want to let the admins stay admins, but even still, understand that the next step is actually not just identifying the problems, but really hand-holding folks through the solution and the fixing of these problems. That's actually one area of our AI enhancements that we'd like to address is breaking down profiles into specific permission sets in a model that makes sense, right? So you don't necessarily want to just create a permission for all CRUD access of a given object, and instead it's better, we think, to create permission sets based on individual tasks, overall tasks, and then have a permission set group serve as an umbrella for a given role that a user might have. And so we want to use AI to help plan and strategize that migration from a profile to one or many different permission sets. There are tools out there that will convert a profile to a permission set. That is not necessarily, we think, as valuable as doing a true strategic conversion that requires carving up the profile into multiple perm sets, as opposed to just like a basic lift and shift. We want to handhold through something a little bit higher level, and I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, thank you so much. René has yet another question, so he's hard carrying this Q&A. This time a more specific one. In the search dependency analysis, can several items be selected at once?
Yes. So let me go back to the search here. I can search for, let's say I want to look for access to a given Apex class as well as a given system permission. I can run a search, and initially that's going to return anything that grants either of those permissions. But I can do an exact match, which I think is what you're getting at, where I want to find only the permission sets and profiles that have all of those combined. And now, well, maybe this is a bad search to begin with, because our previous search also only returned the system administrator. But maybe I could add, for instance, some object level. Let's go. Let's also add create, the create permission on the account object. If I were to do a generic search for that, I'm going to see a lot of different permission sets and profiles that grant that, because many do provide access to the account object. If I narrow this down to the exact match, I'm going to only now see the system administrator profile. So yes, you can select many different permissions at once, and you can choose whether you want to search for any of them or all of them together.
Yeah, great. Yeah, next question by René. Could you envisage actually deploying changes to another org instead of just showing the differences between them?
Yes, that is, I think, we don't have that. We didn't have that listed on the roadmap slide, but of course, metadata edits is top of mind for us, right? And that includes deployments from one org to another. So that is clearly an obvious next step in this change explorer, the ability to then select which specific permissions or differences you'd like to deploy to another org. That's one of the things we were really excited about when we started building out the cross-org functionality, is how we could also ultimately impact deployments one day.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And René continues to ask, can you confirm related lists are not taken into account in page layout comparison?
Currently, that's correct. Right now, we're not looking at related lists in the page layout analysis.
Yeah. Okay, and one last question. Could you remind us of PA's license model?
Oh, yes, we are operating on a freemium model with up to 50 users for free in your organization. Beyond that, we offer the application at $2 per user per month for all Salesforce licenses in your org.
Yeah, great. Thank you, René, for all those questions. And there's yet another question. How do you deal with auto-proc changes?
With automated changes, for instance, I think maybe you're referring to creating a new field, and that automatically manipulates profiles or perm sets sometimes in the background. Is that right?
Yeah, to briefly elaborate, it's not an important point, but in using other tools, the most frequent notifications I get are those from AutoProc, where Salesforce has changed something. And these are kind of false positives, because it was not the intention of the admin to do that.
Right. Well, so those would show up as changes if I were in the Change Explorer, looking at comparing multiple snapshots. Now, the automated notifications are on our roadmap, so we are working toward building that. But that's a good insight. I appreciate that. That we should not just look at did something change, but did something change intentionally to avoid littering your notification window with kind of spurious information. That makes sense.
I'd be happy to provide you with examples.
I'd love it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. First, thank you to Jonas for moderating the Q&A. Let's hope that with a somewhat larger audience, we have more questions in future sessions. Then thank you so much for everyone in attendance. I hope this has been an informative and insightful session for you. And finally, thank you to our great speaker, Scott, who has a profound experience in the Salesforce ecosystem and has shared so many interesting details about Permissions Assistant with us today.
Thank you so much, René, and the entire group for having me. It was great. Looking forward to chatting with all you afterwards.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's maybe do a debrief. And yeah, I hope you are considering the next sessions in our series for your attendance. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye, guys.